Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Shadow and Sun Show. Hope you guys had a great week. It's finally Friday, and we had a little mishap yesterday. We couldn't get the craft video up. The little guy was having a really severe allergy attack, and so we're gonna just post that after this video tonight, sometime probably after 10 Cars Tavern. Hope you guys drop by and hang out with us over there, because I'll be there, and I know Cal will probably be there, and hopefully the rest of you will come in and flood his channel in the chat section. In the meantime, I am going to review book 6 of the Arduin series, the first generation, the first series of Arduin. This is book 6, House of the Rising Sun. I finished this last week and went over it again this morning. And again, it's another great addition to your Arduin collection. I really enjoyed it. It's still not my favorite book yet. I'm gonna wait and get to book 9 before I weigh in on which one was my favorite. And as usual, I'm gonna go through the table of contents. You know what? Maybe let me show you that one picture, because there's always some piece of artwork or another, sometimes several, that really stand out. I think this was the one that I liked mostly. If I can find it. Hold on, just there we go. It looks to me as though it's taking place on board a ship, which I'm going to do a video on nautical adventures coming up here soon, because those are my favorite for some reason. I really like the idea of island hopping and treasure hunting, in the pirate vein, looking for buried treasure on forgotten islands. But let's dive right into it. I don't know if you have this copy or have a copy of this in your own collections. If not, I highly recommend getting obviously all 9, starting with the reprints and the hardback version. But the first chapter is a new character class, the Adventurer. And back in the day, my friends and I had come up with something very similar, and our take on it was a little bit different. His David A.Hargrave's take on the Adventure was more of a I almost want to say more of an explorer, as opposed to or sort of a Indiana Jones type of character, not staying in one place too long, spending your money as quickly as you get it, going from adventure to adventure with no hope of any long-term plans other than the next day. It's an interesting character class. But personally, I would prefer just running the good old-fashioned Ranger. It's not a bad class. It's just, not my particular cup of tea. Then I'm going to lump a couple of chapters together, that being the Street Urchins of Arduin, the Beggars Guild, and the Assassins Guild. And I suppose the Arduin Law and Redress of Assassination. David A.Hargrave had a lot of large metropolitan cities from my impressions, that had large areas of slums and poverty-stricken folk who had no other recourse but to resort to crime. A lot of the games I run are not so urban and not so dismal and dark. I have lots of Shire-like and Rivendell-like places, and other places akin to other stories. I don't want to give any names away, because I'm gonna do reports, reviews on those books in the upcoming month. More or less happier places. I want to say, more innocent and less dingy, dirty, and crime ridden. But if you do have places like that in your game worlds, and I don't think I don't have places like that. I do have many very very large cities and city states in my game worlds, but more often than not, I try to shy away from them, just because it's less Dungeons and Dragons and more Thieves World, and I did enjoy Thieves World back in the day, but I prefer things more worth saving, from the big bad evils of the world, as opposed to slowly succumb to said evils. And the laws and rules and regulations and traditions of the Assassins Guild, the Thieves Guild, and the Beggars Guild are highly detailed in here, and they offer these chapters offer a great deal of insight and information if you have places like that, because I do believe they would exist in larger cities. You know, some places you're not going to find those kinds of guilds, or they'll just be, you know, smaller outposts of a larger network of those guilds. The rules of assassination make some sense if you're going to actually allow assassin guilds, you know, that operate more or less out in the open, as opposed to being completely, you know, just thing of myth and legend and unproven in your worlds. Poisons of Arduin Assassins, another great chapter. I have many different poisons in my worlds, and I often use the sort of Arduin style of they do this much damage, and if you survive the damage, then you live, as opposed to just save or die, which you know, is just sort of pushing character death to limits I'm not comfortable with, especially in later levels. If you know your character dies between first and third level, okay, but if you've made it to 7th, 9th, 10th, 12th level, and I just throw a save or die at you, it's either a really hairy situation that you were forewarned about, or it just seems like too easy a way to just arbitrarily kill off a character, and I'm just not on board with that. I'll kill your character. You do something stupid and it's warranted, you know, you'll just take hit points until you can't anymore, as opposed to just, you know, oh, well, there's a 40% chance that you just die. That just seems like a great way to lose players and ruin a good story that the characters have worked so hard on. Next is commercial medicines of Arduin, and I'm going to lump that in with the Arduin food, because they're both great ways of personalizing your world and allowing for technological as opposed to mystical ways of healing and keeping characters alive and you know, letting the game continue, as opposed to spending weeks or months laid up in a bed somewhere as you slowly get one hit point back a day, which I think is kind of, it's probably accurate depending on the character and the situation, but with Magic out there, it just seems like, you know, if there's something you can drink that'll give you, you know, 3d8 plus 3 hit points back, that's a magic that's unheard of even in modern technology. It's so powerful that if you were to roll the max and get, what, 8, 16, 24, 27 hit points of life, you could spread that around and mystically cure, you know, a dozen people of, you know, something that in modern day would literally kill you. It seems to me that kind of magic is just overlooked in how powerful it can be. If you take 6 hit points of damage and drink a healing potion and you're healed and you fell off, you know, a 20-foot, you know, wall or cliff, and, you know, you literally broke some bones, but you drink the D6, you get them back, and, you know, your bones are healed. We can't do that today. That's magic beyond, you know, most people's understanding of just how powerful that would be. So having, you know, semi-technological, alchemical ways of healing and curing and things like that, I think are definitely a boon on any game system. I'm fond of using the binding wounds, or the rules similar to Shadows of Brimstone's Catch Your Breath, where you can roll a d3 and get that many wounds back after a fight. That alone can seriously save a party from you know, destruction. And I'm going to go into that and the rules I think that should exist for armor in at least AD&D. While it's very prevalent in some other games, for Dungeons and Dragons, I think they just totally missed the mark on that rule. Then there's a section on Arduin avians, Arduin pets, and of course more monsters, all of which I think are a great idea. If you haven't thought about the regular animals, you know, cats, dogs, horses, cows, pigs, and sheep, things like that, zebras, he's come up with, you know, his own versions, you know, sort of mutations or just variations on the same animals that we have here on Earth. And often I find it, kind of humorous that every D&D world has chickens and cows and horses and pigs, as opposed to things that are completely different on the evolutionary scales. So having things like that, and of course having new monsters to choose from, is always a blessing. And so more Arduin monsters, there's just more here. And until you pick up the bestiary that comes out later on down the road, having access to more monsters is, always a great way to keep the game fresh, alive, and a constant mystery to the players. Then there's several sections on all the different types of magic, wizard, druid, priestly, rune singer, illusion. The same could be said. More is always better. But then there's a short chapter on dragon magic, which I enjoyed immensely, giving dragons their own unique spells. And I know there's some spells out there that are similar to that in different works of Dungeons and Dragons, but having more things that are specifically and only usable by dragons, that of course dragons, would have come up with, millennia ago. Just as a player character can create a new spell if they do the research, I think dragons, with all that free time, literally lounging about all day long with nothing to do but sleep, count treasure, and torment their prisoners, I think they would have come up with volumes worth of unique dragon magic. So it was a very fun chapter. Then there's more alchemical goodies and alchemical mayhem, all the way down to some, I believe there's alchemical potions and dusts and ointments and things like that in this book. And then there's a large section of Bardic Oddities, another, interesting chapter. I know right now there is a bit of a disdain for bards in most games, and I always found them to be quite interesting. Even the second edition, which I did not like much, and I'm guessing that that's where most of that came from, because the original bard having to become a fighter, then a thief, then a bard was one of my favorite character classes of all time. And then give him an actual guitar, and that just sounds like one of the best kind of characters to ever have. That's my opinion. Then another chapter I appreciated a lot was the rare and legendary gems and jewels. Treasure often gets unappreciated after a while. The endless numbers of 50 gold piece gems and bars of gold and gold coins, silver, platinum. I even throw in mithril out there, and those often lead to a party fight because of the sheer value of something that's so small. But I throw it out there anyways, just because it just throws some variety. But this chapter dealt with the equivalent of crown jewels and unique works of art that were gems or jewelry, that I think adds a lot to motivation and intrigue and excitement when players find a piece of treasure that has some legend and lore and history behind it. I really think that's a great idea. The item may only be worth 50 gold pieces, but because it belonged to so and so and was a prized possession, or it's a scepter from a long dead empire, or a missing piece of some country's crown jewels, that the reward is worth far more than the actual fenced or monetary value of an item, I think is just a great way to make a treasure more memorable and actually worth more than the sum of its parts. So I really like that chapter, and I hope the game masters that are watching, pay attention and maybe do similar things of their own if they don't already. Turn a pile of treasure into something more than just 1,500 in gold. Turn it into something that maybe starts a quest, or allows the players to gain something more than just a reward, but the favor of a king or a prince, or a town wanting their trophy back from ages long past. Then Excuse me, guys. Where was I? Jules. Old Legends of Arduin. This was a great chapter. Kind of like urban legends and folk tales and ghost stories we tell around the campfire and on Halloween, and when you're out backpacking and you settle down for the night. There's nothing better than a good ghost story, and having legends and stories like this in your world that you don't have to hand the players a stack of papers this big going, okay, this is my world, read it, then we can start playing. Toss them out every once in a while, a story about the haunted bridge or the caves of such and such that really have nothing in them but did once upon a time, or the ghostly apparition that only shows up on these days or these nights or in this location. Things like that just add to your world's believability, and just makes that whole world come more alive. And I think if you have little short stories you can hand out or tell from time to time, I think it's only going to be more enjoyable to your players than trying to hand them a dictionary sized volume of paper saying, okay, well, this is my world, read what you want. I've never been fond of doing that. I always like to parse it out just a little bit at a time. A little story here, a little story there, while you're fumbling with your own papers and getting things ready with your hands behind the DM shield. Have something ready that you can tell them. Maybe it's just a bard telling a story at the local tavern that everybody sits in awe and listens to, instead of starting a bar fight. I think you'll all be better off having read this chapter and taking that particular bit of advice. Then there was the old gods, not really gone, but not really forgotten. Again, more ghost stories and more clerical content. I've been reading a lot of books, as you guys know, lately, and one thing I keep noticing is that throughout all of the most famous stories, like Tolkien and some of the others that I've read recently, the lack of things or reasons for clerics to exist just seems incredibly short-sighted for us as gamers. Having a good set of gods and demons and devils and their wars amongst each other, and the good gods, the bad gods, the neutral gods, etc., as opposed to just the gods of the elves, the gods of the dwarves, gods of the humans, and you just serve them by racial lines and things like that. Really is a disservice to the paladins and clerics and druids out there, and having the big bad guys that are always out there is a definite must, especially for the players out there who like paladins, which to me, I think in my experience, there have been more paladins in my games than clerics and druids combined, and those are really the front lines of a religion, or at least of the lawful good religions. I think that doing your homework and really spending a little bit more time on the gods and demons and devils and elementals and things like that really can't hurt a good game, unless you're absolutely opposed to religion and religious campaigns and religious motivations behind campaigns, because they would be there. They would be there in abundance. So many different little priests and religions and sects and cults would be out there, if not out in the open, then hidden in the darkness, hidden in the shadows. They would be there whether you like it or not. People are superstitious, and humans, probably more so than the other races, except maybe the orcs. There would be gods out there. Even if they didn't exist for real in your games, they would still be there. The religions would be there. People would follow those religions, and those religions would motivate them in ways that would be pretty obvious once you think about it. So having another chapter with David A.Hargrave's insight onto things like that is very helpful. Then this chapter was probably my least favorite chapter. No offense, but the noble families of Arduin. Those are really, unless you're running Arduin and you're using the maps and you've really dedicated a lot of time to the Arduin books, it's really not going to be that helpful other than to mimic or copy them when you're looking for personalities and motivations and styles of, famous families in your world. I think that's better left up to your own world and your own creativity. Maybe grab things from, here and there, but, you know, taking them and plopping them in your world, I think is just a bad idea. Then the chapter superheroes and sword swingers. Again, I think make your own, because that way you can make them as strong or as weak as possible without having them steal the show. And nobody hates it more than I do than when an NPC comes in and saves the day out of nowhere. If you're going to have that happen, have it happen organically and as the last card up your sleeve to save the party. More often than not, I would just sorry guys, you're dead. But if you're gonna, make them somebody they know and somebody they're familiar with, or someone you want them to know. And then finally, there's a small chapter in here, another glimpse into the world of Kaz, and I'm grateful for it. But now that I have the big encyclopedia of the Arduin world, I'm going to just skip those chapters from now on and just wait until I get into the big book, which will probably be next month, that I'll start really trying to read that gigantic tome of all that is Arduin. So I hope you guys enjoyed this review. I hope you guys enjoy this book. It's one of the better ones. It's one of my favorites, but not yet my favorite, because I'm going to leave that to the end when I've read all 9. But let me know what you think in the comment section, which book you're reading now, how far you've gotten into this. And until then, we'll see you guys in a couple hours with the craft video. Have a great weekend. We love you guys, and we'll see you soon. Bye.